Hi, I'm Steve Brook, one of your neighborhood pastors, and
I'm Justin Black, one of the other neighborhood pastors here at Christ Church.
we want to be talking today about Leading 101, where we're going to look at some of just our hopes and our desires, our expectations for you as a leader of a group. Also, we're going to look at the logistics of leading a group, and then we hope to conclude with really looking at the power. There's a great power in leading a group, and so we want to start out now in this desire, our expectations of you leading your neighborhood group. We want you to be able to take ownership of your neighborhood group, and remember that you are the one that's leading them. Even though you are going to encourage participation, you're the point person. You're the one that needs to be taking responsibility.
Well, Steve, let me ask you this. You talk about taking ownership. What does that actually mean? What does that look like when you say take ownership of a group, when you want to lead it?
Well, I see myself as the leader of a group as someone who I'm thinking about, are they being contacted? Are they being thought of? Are they being followed up on? Even if it's not necessarily me, I'm making sure. That's the thing that's going through my head. I feel like the shepherd of this flock, and even if I have hired hands and I have other people in on it, I'm making sure that I'm the one thinking through the care of these people in the group.
Okay, so it's their group, and we want them to make sure that they take full-on responsibility for it.
Yes,
it's not
by all
you
means.
Leading it. It's not me leading
by
it, but
myself, right?
It's them, and they're the ones being as you said, the shepherd for the neighborhood group.
Sometimes we think of them as point people.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just taking point on it. I may delegate and do different things and try to get the group to really take responsibility, but I'm the one that's at point. That's what it means to be a leader.
And one of the last things for our desires and expectations for you to lead your neighborhood group is, again, pouring into yourself. We want you to be connected with the other neighborhood group leaders that are around you, which is why it's so important that we are attending our neighborhood huddles and that we're there with the neighborhood coach so that we can share the wins that are happening, that we can talk about the things that we're dealing with in our group, and you have other people there to lift you up and encourage you. So those neighborhood huddles are there for the group leaders once a month to be able to talk about your group and also to be able to get the information you need of what is happening within the neighborhood's ministry here at Christ Church.
Yeah.
So what's the expectation that we have for them? I mean, what is it that when it comes to leading a group, and what is it that we really want, the purpose for that?
Well, we want them to provide a predictable environment where participants are going to experience authentic community and connections together and also spiritual growth at the same time. Let's. I know. I can tell where you're going. You're thinking about that predictable environment, because it sounds kind of like a negative thing to be a predictable group environment, but actually it's a very positive thing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Because when I think of groups, when I think of people coming to join a group, the thing that I always think of the most is, what is it that keeps people from joining a neighborhood group? And the number one thing that I have found and that I've seen in other people is it's fear of the unknown. When you don't know something, when you don't expect something, when you don't know what's happening there, you're less likely to go and attend because you have no clue what you're walking into. You don't know if you're walking into, a group that has 5 people or a group that has 15 people. You might not have ever talked with the leader. So it's very important that we are predictable in all that we do so that we can bring more people in so that they can be connected. And so that predictability is really there to take the fear away from new people, because we always want new people coming to neighborhood groups. What was the vision statement? When Jason talked about 2020 vision, he said how many percentage of people?
70%.
70% of people in a neighborhood group from Christ Church. So let me think about that. If we want 70% of the people participating in neighborhood groups, that means we're going to need to create and foster an environment that is open for new people to come to a group.
Right.
And so we have to take some of those obstacles away for people so that they can come and so that they can join a neighborhood group. So that's...
When I think of predictable group environment, I think of it's the same day every week. It's the same time. It gets started on time. It ends on time. The same elements are usually part of that. There's prayer, and there is a Bible study, and there is a time to socialize, and those things. And it's not, and it does, and it. There's some consistency. Maybe that's a good word for.
I like that,
consistency.
Yeah, I think that's a great word for it. Is we want the group to be predictable / consistent, and so I think that's very important. What we'd love if you guys do is take just a moment right now and discuss whether it's in your huddle or you're by yourself, and think about your neighborhood group. Is your neighborhood group predictable in the sense for a new person coming in? Do they know what to expect for your neighborhood group? And take some time to think, talk about it, and see how you can or become better at making your group predictable. All right, so now that you've had a little bit of time to talk about our desire and expectations for leading a group in this one-on-one session, what we kind of want to talk about right now is the logistics. I know that's one of the things people always ask. Well, Justin, logistically, what do I do? How do I lead the group? What are the things that I really need to know when it comes to leading a group? So what we're going to do for this short segment is we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about what you do before the meeting, what you do during the meeting, and what you do after the meeting. We're going to hit those 3 things. So before the meeting, one of the things I think is super important is that you are communicating with people.
Right.
Okay. Now, what I have always said is that email is great for information distribution. That is what email is good for. But Steve, what is the best way to actually communicate with someone about your group?
About your group, especially early on, a phone call. Even seeing them at church, if that's possible, face-to-face is even better than a phone call. But a phone call really does, it says, hey, I really do want you to come to the group. I want you to be a part of the group. I want to invite you in. You're that important to me. Like you said, email is important because people will, when they're looking for the information, they're going to want to look and search in their email and find it. So what I usually suggest is, yes, make a phone call, but also then follow up with an email as well. And make sure they're on you're regularly communicating throughout the week. Every week before the group happens. Make sure that information is going out to remind them.
Yes. And so, Steve, when we're talking about communicating with the group and sending out emails and making phone calls, there's a few things that we definitely want to make sure are communicated to those people who are joining our group. We want them to make sure they know the day, the time, if there's any food that you guys do in the group, or what the children arrangements are for the group. There's a great resource that we put on the toolbox, and it's called lifekids.tv. And it's phenomenal for creating an environment for your kids so that they have something to do that's engaging for them, but it's also something that helps them to continue to grow. And it's a great thing. I've used it as a tool in my neighborhood group, and the kids will sometimes watch that, and there's actually Bible lessons that go along with it as well. And so as you're communicating, those are some things that are super important for you to be able to communicate to people. So pick up that phone, give them a call. And Steve, the thing I always like to say, when you call someone, even if they don't answer, leave them a voicemail.
Right.
That's super important, because then if you're the person on the other end of that line and you just see that you have a missed call, you don't think much of it because you might not know the number. But then you have the voicemail and you're like, oh, this is Steve, the neighborhood group leader that I signed up for last week that I don't remember because my wife asked me to do it.
Yeah, right.
How many times does that happen?
Yeah.
And so it helps to kind of jog the memory and say, oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, now I know. Okay, so now I know when the group meets. I know the day. I know the time. Okay, they don't expect me to bring food, or they have food on their own. So those are just some things that we need to be able to do before the meeting.
And I think that's sometimes something that can get old. So what I try to do is I try to make it in like a copy and paste type thing, so that every email there is something always there about the day, the time, all that stuff. Because what we've had happen sometimes is a leader will get so used to his group members that he will send out, oh, well, here's the questions for this week's study. There was nothing in there about any details. And the new person who finally in their mind had gotten the courage to go looks at that and says, no day, no time, nothing about what I'm supposed to do with my kids, all that stuff. So every time that you communicate, it's like you got to find a way to make sure that all those essential details are covered.
Yep. The next thing for before a group is preparing by digging into the Word and reading through the curriculum ahead of time. Yes, we're going to always provide, well, actually not always, but during the sessions, we're going to provide you with the curriculum, but we want you guys to get it ahead of time. You will have it ahead of time, read through it, and then also kind of forecast. What is your group going to say? How are they going to respond? How are they going to react to the questions that are within there? And that's why it's so important that you yourself are digging into God's Word, you're reading the curriculum ahead of time, so that you can kind of forecast what's going to happen within your neighborhood group. And you guys will know your group better than we will. And so the curriculum that we give you is a guide for you to be able to use to best lead your group. And
I think we want you to facilitate your group. And so in preparation for that, you really are, you're not preparing to teach a lesson. Now, sometimes preparation means if I see a question and I'm scared about what that answer, what that all means theologically, and I don't know what that is or whatever, yes, I'll do some research. But in the group time, I'd kind of like to see if that answer actually comes up among the people, not just something where I have to teach that. I just want to be prepared that way, but also the main way that I want to prepare as a facilitator is, that's a really good question. What's a follow-up question? If nobody starts talking, how might I rephrase that question? Different things like that. That really is what I think of when I think of really preparing for a group. I'm preparing to facilitate that discussion so that people take the discussion and really dig into it.
And Steve, I think that you nailed it, hit the nail right on the head there. We want them to be facilitators. We want you guys to be facilitators. You don't have to be the expert teacher. You don't have to be the master teacher. If there comes a question that comes up within your neighborhood group that you don't know, maybe it's a deep theological question, or maybe it's just something in regards to the Bible that you haven't studied before, don't try to answer it. Just say, that's a great question. Why don't we follow up with our neighborhood pastor, and then we can move forward from there? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to be a resource for you guys. Don't feel like you have to know the answer to every question. We don't expect you to know the answer to every question, but we do expect you to be able to lead and facilitate this group so that they can continue to grow spiritually. And then when things come up that you don't know, that's when you push it back to us. And that's when we get the opportunity to follow up with people and to talk with them and to be able to answer some of those more deeper theological questions or philosophical questions that they may have that come up from your studies. So Don't be too afraid to get into some of those discussions and allow them to ask questions. So Steve, what do we do at that very first meeting? Can you kind of give me a quick run through, like a short run through of what that first meeting should look like?
Well, during that first meeting, we want to be able to just cast a vision of what this group is going to be like. Try to cast a vision of that predictable environment. Here are the things that we will try to do every week and that kind of stuff. And also we'll look at what are the goals? What are people wanting to get out of this time together? And what are we trying to get out of the group time together? And really kind of expressing those goals and even looking at what we call a covenant.
Oh, yes.
Being able to agree together on not only what our goals are as a group, but also how we're going to address things as different situations come up.
Yeah, the group covenant is a great tool. It's a great resource. We actually have a covenant that we have created that is on the toolbox. There's a number of new things. I strongly encourage you, go to the toolbox, go into the resources tab, and see some of the brand new resources that we have there for you guys to be able to pull from and to be able to use. And especially during that first group, you definitely want to make sure people have the opportunity to connect, but you set that level of expectation of what they can expect moving forward from every group. And so I think you hit that perfectly, Steve. We want people to connect and to know what's going to happen moving forward. And so after we have neighborhood group, after we have that first one, I think it's super important that we follow up with people. We talked about email, and that's great, but also following up with the people who might not have attended. One of the things that I do a lot at my group is I delegate tasks to a lot of people. I don't do everything within my group. I don't take the attendance of my group. I don't follow up with everyone in my group, but I have people who do that. I will sometimes, within my group, say, hey, so-and-so wasn't here tonight. Who would like to follow up with them and give them a call and just let them know that they were missed? And so I do that within my group, so that gets the group to do things that are connected together, and that gets them connecting with each other. And so that helps to follow up with people and help them to feel like they were missed and that they were valued.
And you're training them in what it means to care about their group, and you're training them in different aspects of leading a group. And so that's fantastic.
So, Steve, we've talked about the desire and expectations for leading a group. We've talked about some logistics of leading a group. Now, really, when it comes down to leading 101, there is so much to do. I mean, there are so many different things that we would like to touch on, that we would like to share with you guys, but we would literally be here for probably 8 hours.
Right.
And so what we've decided to do is we've said, hey, we have really 8 essentials that we want you to be able to do well as a leader. And we put that up on the toolbox, and it's leaders' essentials and tips for leading well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to just briefly go through these 8, but in the future, we're going to touch on all 8 of these more in depth and have a specific training exactly on these. But these are great little guidelines for you so you can know, oh, these are the things that I need to be doing within my group. So how's that sound?
That sounds great.
All right, so the first one, leader essentials, tips for leading well, it's staying connected. Staying connected. What does that mean? The first thing we want you to do is we want you to be staying connected with God. We want you to be growing in a relationship with Him. We want you staying connected to the church. You cannot lead other people where you have not been led to. And so that's the first thing as far as a tip for you is you have to be pouring into yourself. You have to be being poured into. You have to be connected. You know, Jesus says, we have to be connected to the vine. And if we're not connected to the vine, then we cannot take part. We don't abide in that. And so that's one of the super important things is staying connected. What's the next one, Steve?
The next one is cultivating relationships. And this is so important because, relationships at the end of all things is like one of the most important things in life. And so it's just essential that we just help others to be focused on relationships, and also that we're modeling that out on our streets, in our neighborhoods, that we are cultivating relationships not only in our group, but on our street.
Yes.
In our family, in our neighborhoods, that wherever we go, we are cultivating relationships, that we truly model, that we care about people, and that we enjoy having relationships with people.
I think that's great. The next one is we want you to promote participation. What does that mean? We want you to engage the group. We don't want you to be the only one talking. Again, you're not a teacher, you're a facilitator. So take that time and facilitate. Grab the group in and get them to participate and think about different ways and different things that you can do to be able to promote that participation, which is why it's so important. Going back to the what do we do before a neighborhood group? We read through curriculum ahead of time. We're praying, we're in God's Word, and we're thinking, how is this going to help? How am I going to help lead and facilitate this group during this study?
Yeah, I think the next one is just serving together. I think it's so important that not only myself as a leader am I modeling serving, but also how am I helping my group to serve together? And so sometimes that's through finding service opportunities at church. and we serve in that way together, or special events where we're serving together, or even finding more organic type of things where we're finding someone is in need out in our own neighborhood or our own area. And so, hey, what's our group going to do about that? We also ask ourselves, are we consistently finding opportunities to serve? Because one of the tendencies and the temptations of a group, especially a Bible study type of group, is to just start to feel comfortable in the groove of Bible study, Bible study, Bible study, Bible study. But really, we want you to not just be just navel gazers. We also want you to serve together. There's such power in serving together as a group.
I guess that's why we have this whole strategy of connect, grow, serve, and go. We want those 4 elements to be part of what we do of a neighborhood group. The next one after serve together is to celebrate together. And what does that mean? That means celebrating the wins that we have as a neighborhood group. I remember one time in my neighborhood group, we had this one young lady, and she doesn't talk very much, if ever, in our group. And one time I said, hey, let's all go around the room and let's say just a short sentence prayer or less of something you're thankful for. And we went around the circle and every single person prayed. And as soon as we were all done praying, I stopped. I said, hey guys, I just want to say, and I turned to this young lady, I said, thank you so much for praying. Thank you so much for coming up out of your shell and being willing to pray to God right here in front of us. And I told her, and I said to the group, that was your first time really opening up and really talking within the group. And I just want to say thank you. And everyone else was like, oh, wow, that was. And she got this big smile on her face because I noticed, because I celebrated the win. That was her taking a step in her spiritual growth. Now, yes, it was a small one, but we celebrate the wins. And now she is actually becoming more vocal at our neighborhood group as a result of that, and because she has continued to repeat what is rewarded. So make sure that we celebrate together.
I think another essential in a group setting is to provide care. And so we want you to be able to provide care for your group, and also to help encourage your group to be a caring environment. That when people are in the hospital, that it's not just, hey, that's the pastor's job to go in and visit somebody. It really is the group's job. When people are that couples having their baby, and hey, that group can find ways to show care. When someone shares something in a prayer request, we really do try to care for one another in our thoughts, in our words, in our prayers, also in our actions, just trying to provide care for each other. I think that's important.
No, that's super important. The next one, Steve, is we have to replace ourselves. We cannot be the ones to do it all as a neighborhood group leader. We have to constantly be trying to find someone else who can be that co-leader that can eventually lead.
Right.
Because I can't do it for the rest of my life. Okay? But we have this commission to go and make disciples. Make more disciples, make better disciples. So part of that means finding someone that you can teach, mentor, train, that you can pour into that could eventually replace yourself. I think that's one of the greatest things that groups allow with the life cycle is finding that person who you can pour into and actually having that Timothy or, being that Paul for someone and those type of things and those type of relationships that you only get when you're with a group of believers.
And I think that's so important because I think that's really lends to the last one, and that is to end well. We want our groups to be able to end well. That groups have a transitional nature to themselves, and sometimes they can go for years, and sometimes they will go for seasons. But we want any group to end well. We don't want it to end abruptly. We don't want it to end by just quitting. We want things to end well by leaders being replaced, hosts being replaced. We understand that sometimes people have to move on to new states and new places, but really try to think through your group as how it's going to end and end well. Transition if it must, and transition well.
And it's almost like multiplying
Yes.
your group is really what it boils down to.
Really, that's the ideal. Is we would like for our groups to multiply. That a group does so well that someone in the group is poured into enough that other group member can really become a co-leader and even take a new group, and that we can help people get into, but also they can invite people into, and maybe even on a different day in similar areas, but really multiply the groups.
Yep.
That's so important, and that's the best way we would like to see things end, is by my group continuing, but the leader that I invested myself into goes and begins to bring, to create something on his own street,
Yes.
in his own area.
And so what those were the 8 essentials, tips for leading well. And as I said, each one of those 8, we're going to do an individual training on throughout 2017 so that we can better train and equip each other to be able to be the best leaders that we can, so that we can really do what God has called us to do here at Christ Church. And that's to go make disciples, more disciples, better disciples. And there's no better way to do that than through what we have here as neighborhood groups. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you take some time, chew on what we've just talked about. Whether you've taken notes or you go back and rewatch, take some time to think about it, talk about it, and see how and what you can pull from this training, or which of those 8 essentials you are really looking forward to seeing as the year comes through.